Well, welcome to the Conscious Parent Summit. How to confidently step into parenting from conception through birth and beyond, and learning to trust that inner guidance of love. I'm your host, Quinne Brown Huffman, DOULA Quinne. And the mission of the summit is to support parents, pregnant parents, aspiring parents, and those parents lost in the overwhelm of responsibility. And today I am super excited because ABBEY Epstein is here and she's joining this conversation. Someone who had a huge impact on my starting this journey as a doula, as a birth mentor. ABBEY Epstein is not only a woman and a mother, she is a film director and a producer, most known for working in the field of documentary. Her film, The Business of Being Born, which deals with the birth process in American hospitals, is one of her most widely known and acclaimed films. She directed her first documentary, Until the Violence Stops, which is a film about the impact of the vagina monologues on a global scale. 5 years after releasing Until the Violence Stops, ABBEY Epstein released The Business of Being Born in 2008. Her third film, Sweetening the Pill, is a film that aims to address the side effects of taking the birth control pill. Much of ABBEY Epstein's film career deals with birth and sex, and her film Until the Violence Stops premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2004 and won an Emmy after its screening on Lifetime. The Business of Being Born debuted at the Tribeca Film Festival in 2007 and released theatrically in 2008, which is when I saw it after I learned what a doula is and that there is this whole spectrum of choices for everybody. I remember I was in San Francisco and did not even think I wanted to become a mother. Did not realize how much your film would influence me, Abby. But I'll tell you another story about that in a minute. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, my honor, Quinn.
Ay, ay, ay. I am also just an aspiring documentary maker and a storyteller. So you just going out there like that has been, it's an inspiration. And when I came back to South Africa in 2016, after 10 years in America, I came with a mission and I have proposals for all these things I want to do here because we also have so many stories to tell. And I keep going back to referencing you and your work. And so just know that. But let's dive in. You're a mother of two, and the idea conscious parenting, what does that mean for you? How do you understand that concept?
I mean, for me personally, I feel like conscious parenting, it's almost like a daily practice. I really think that it's something that, almost like having a meditation practice or yoga practice, any practice, it's like, oh, there goes my dad. Oh, yeah, I had a feeling that.
It's all good. We are live from our homes, and so no problem.
Yes, live from New York City, and I'm in my parents' home, and my father, I think, has just come back, and the dog is going crazy.
Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, the greetings.
This is another type of.
So as she does that, make sure you guys go look up Business of Being Born. The website is The Business of Life, where so much all your work lives.
The business of that life. Okay, I'm sorry.
So
hopefully
daily practice.
Too much, but it is. I think it's a daily practice, and I think that it's like something where, like any practice, right? It's kind of like some days you're very aligned and centered, and you're able to parent from a place that feels calm, and detached, and you my God, somebody must be upstairs. And then, so some days I think, and then other days, I think it's like a struggle where you are more triggered, or you're processing some of your own childhood experiences, or you're projecting things onto, there's to me, it's just like an energy, you know what I mean? It's a real energy imbalance. And, you know, when it's in flow, you feel it, right?
Yeah.
And then when it's kind of like, you're trying to control or project, or you can feel when, or you're almost like subconsciously reenacting mechanisms from your own childhood, pattern behavior, and you're not sort of, it's sort of happening to you unconsciously. That's sort of the other side of it. So, for me, it's very much, I would say, like a daily practice to find that kind of awareness and equilibrium.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's for sure. The contrast is real. What goes up must come down. I feel the same, like every day, tuning into what is up for me in order to be able to show up and be present. Because when I think about conscious and being, it's just that self-awareness. And um, with your film, The Business of Being Born, you went down so many different paths and discovered all these different ways women prepare, go through pregnancy, choose to give birth, and explore different ways, especially home birth. And how do you think that affected your own personal understanding of how just the pregnancy and your preparation in that time, and then the kind of birth you have, then you step into parenting. How does that affect us as parents?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just gonna step around prenatal psychology, and I know you're gonna be covering some of that, but just like from the mother's perspective, I think making the business of being born was when I discovered, that this idea of parenting starts from conception. And, it does sound really, I don't know, it might sound a little trite or cheesy, but it is. It's really like these decisions that you're making, starting from the moment, I would say, let's go even preconception, actually. I would say that it's really about that that calling in, right? Of like, I want to create a life. I want to bring a life into the world. I want to parent this life. All this, circumstances even around that, right? Because people become parents in very different ways. Surprises sometimes, years of fertility treatments, sometimes adoptions, right? So I think if you are like that journey, I think that sort of journey that you have during the pregnancy period, is really such a precious time. And I think part of what, Ricky Lake, my partner, the reason she was so interested in making the film was that she really felt that these women that she knew, at least, were like focused on all these external things, right? Everybody was focused on sort of like, people were researching more about the stroller that they wanted to buy than the type of birth they wanted to have. And, the somehow the whole experience, of carrying a baby, delivering a baby was getting either kind of washed away or just medicalized, or just sort of put into somebody else's hands. I'll just show up at the hospital and you tell me what to do and it'll all be okay. And what we were trying to show in the movie is, no, that's not what's happening in America at all. And it was there were a lot of rude awakenings for like many parents about what they didn't expect to happen. Yeah. When, their birth plan went awry. So for me, I think you know, that 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 journey that you're taking, and again, I really do feel that it's not about the choice, right? It's not about, home birth is not for everyone.
No.
Unmedicated birth is not for everyone, right? It's
Mm-mm.
about feeling empowered and respected and cherished in the moment
Yes.
of delivery, and
Mm.
not feeling scared and out of control and threatened or bullied or like, somebody else is holding strings. That to me is, that's, I think, what really paves the way,
Yeah.
and I really do think that that paves the way into, you know, becoming a parent from a place of trust and feeling like I can make decisions already for this life that I'm bringing into the world. And these are going to be really good decisions, for me and for the family. And I think what we saw in the business of being born, which was so, so desperate to watch. And I know as a doulas have kind of a front row audience to this all the time, is
Mm.
really the opposite of that.
Mm.
Is really the excitement and enthusiasm that this new mother has, and then suddenly everything goes topsy turvy, and the rug is pulled out from under her, and it's like suddenly, there's this birth plan that they didn't think, and it's like, well, no, it's been 5 hours, and we've got to go to surgery, and they're like, whoa, 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 and that's what we saw a lot
Mm.
happening in the maternity care system. And I think why we thought it was important really to show not so much that one type of birth is preferable or more, beneficial than another type of birth, but just the idea of having, putting some sacredness back
Yes.
around the actual process and the journey, right? Because
Mm.
I think the journey that that mother has is life changing and is going to sort of really imprint, that postpartum period.
Oh gosh, yes. I'm so in agreement with that because, you know, it's not about a right or a wrong way of birthing. People get so caught up in that there's this mythology around it, but it's absolutely that you take that autonomy back, and that's been taken away from women in this patriarchal system that took even birthing babies to that extreme, and the whole, financial crisis around it, and taking choices out of people's hands with insurance policies and you name it. And I love what you said when, it's sacred and the journey happens regardless. So if we then add on all the outside stresses of saying, no, you're not doing it right, instead of just really acknowledging that birth is already not going to go according to plan, ever. It never, ever does. But you can manage by your preparation and the choices you make to stay in a place of power and the one that is the authority in that moment. It's you going down that labyrinth. I love the Inanna story. I don't know if you know it. That it's an old story, but it's about the queen goddess that goes down in the underworld, and that's going through labor and birth. And then I feel like it never stops. Every phase of a child's life and every challenge we meet or new idea we come up with. And as a creator, you experience that. You get an idea for a film and then you have to conceptualize it and then you have to like impregnate it and then sort of go through the labor of, and then there's the birth and then there's living with it. So I feel like every project is its own form of birth, which I find the relationship in all of it all the time. um, so yes, so we are storytellers and we are so aware of the media and the influence it has on women. So let's talk about the effects of media on parents' choices and what they think they can do and not do and how they perceive. Pam was talking to me about our first birth story and how that impacts how we then hear information coming in. And I just found that so so fascinating to think about it that way, even. What's been your experience, or what's your idea?
I mean, I just have to tell you that my dog has not made a sound the entire morning. And the second we started recording this, he has not stopped barking. I don't know what he's hearing.
Is it
No,
my
come here.
voice? There's a stranger in the house. It's me.
It's no, it's like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, Quinn.
Oh, shit. Oh, look at him. Cutie. Hello. It's me, Quinn. Don't worry,
All
buddy.
right. I think there's somebody delivering the mail or something. You can't do that, sweetie, okay? Mommy's talking. Okay. So sorry, Quinn. So
No, it's all good.
influences in the media, you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think, I mean, I think what's really interesting is, and there's a lot of writing about this, is that, how can I explain this? There's an irony, at least I'll speak for the United States.
Yes, absolutely.
In the fact that I think pregnancy, birth, and motherhood has become so commercialized, at the height, I think that it's ever been. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
through reality TV shows, through all of these mom shows and baby shows, and pregnant with centuplets, and I'm raising eight kids, and but also like fashionable pregnant mommies wearing stilettos at 9 months, and there's tons of commercialization around it. I mean, don't get me started on like these gender reveal parties, and these
It's so
it's
extreme.
become like, right, like it's become this kind of industry, and the $1,000, $1,500 strollers, and I think everything has become amped. And at the same time, right here at least, we have at least in New York City, I mean, we have midwifery centers, birth centers closing left and right. We have fewer birth options than ever. We have higher maternal and fetal mortality rates. Women are not having good outcomes, especially Black and brown women,
Yes, I know.
not having good outcomes here. And but at the same time, right, and I would say postpartum depression is really its own pandemic.
It is.
Um,
Yes.
we have very high rates of postpartum depression here.
Mm.
So I find that it's sort of the same thing around weddings, right? It's like weddings are like commercialized, but nobody's ever sat down, right? Then when somebody gets divorced 2 years later, they're shocked that, oh, wait, what do you mean? I'm going to lose all this money? Or it's like they never really looked at the structure of it or researched the important things. They're sort of caught up in the superficiality and the fantasy, that
Fantasy.
you're
Yeah.
this pregnant goddess with people laying wreaths around your neck, and then you have this baby, and there's just tons of people coming around bringing food and supporting you, and it's really the opposite. So I do find that and that's, I think, on the negative side. On the positive side, I will say that, when The Business of Being Born came out, we used to do these screenings, and at the premiere or whatever, the first question after the movie would always be, what is a doula? That would be like the first question.
Yes.
I mean, now it's almost 15 years, right, since the movie
Yeah.
was released. And you can't imagine any audience, in the States where somebody hadn't now heard of a doula, right?
Mm.
So, on the other hand, I do think that, a lot of it has to do with The Business of Being Born, but other films in its wake. There have been other, documentaries, films, a little bit more programming where I think we are more aware
Yeah.
of options,
Mm.
and we are seeing like some more reforms in the way hospitals deliver. We are seeing more widespread use of doulas. Like, I wouldn't say necessarily that policies are changing that quickly, but beliefs are changing.
And
You
that's where it
know?
starts, right? So yeah, beliefs is the first step. That's the hardest thing to change, really.
Yeah, beliefs I think are the first step. And, I think that for us here, also the pandemic, we saw skyrocketing rates of home birth, pandemic. And midwives were like, they couldn't even keep up with all the business, right? And so the pandemic really shone a light on women's health because for the first time, you were sort of posed with this question of why are we going to the hospital where there's pandemics and infectious diseases
Yes.
and like why is this where birth is taking place? Why aren't there places that just healthy women go to have babies? And I think that was really highlighted in the pandemic, and a lot of women started choosing out of hospital birth. So that was like another shift we saw.
Yeah, yeah, it's so interesting. The how people perceive things. And so, yes, because here there is still a lot, most audiences, we have to explain what a doula is, really get in there and say you do have different choices to get a birth unit, rather, if even just on a cost, in a cost, most of it's driven by money. Like, I can't afford that. And it just want to bring it home that you do always have a choice, and pulling in that support that you dream of. So the fantasy picture of, but that means you have to prepare. That means you have to speak it out and call in your support system. It's not that it all appears out of thin air. The dream happens in the preparation, and then being self-aware enough of your own journey and what triggers you do have. So less media and more internal work, I guess, or really choosing what we watch and what we take in. Oh yeah. So you had, just correct me if I'm wrong. So you had your birth that was shown on the movie, and that's Mateo, correct? And then your second baby, you did do a VBAC, am I correct? Yes. And
Yes,
and what is his or her name?
Pietro.
Oh, nice. And so tell us a little bit about that journey of going, a vaginal birth after cesarean.
Yeah, I mean, that was an extraordinary journey. I think one of the things that is not maybe that clear in the business of being born, but maybe, I don't know, in my story, there was some confusion. But essentially, with Mateo, I had decided that I wanted to switch to a home birth at around 30 weeks. Um, with, the blessing of my OBGYN and everything, the only caveat was that we knew the baby was breech.
Oh, yes.
So there was always this feeling of like, as I was working, Kara, the home birth midwife in the movie, we always knew we were going to have to wait until like 35, 36 weeks, see if the baby was able to turn, could be turned, before we could really consider a home birth. So that was, one thing. I think the thing that we didn't know is that Mateo had an intrauterine growth restriction. So basically, his growth restriction is essentially when the placenta, for whatever reason, the nutrients are not getting to the baby.
Mm.
So we do not know to this day um, whether that's just because the cord was wrapped so tightly around his neck that it was cutting off the supply, or there was a problem with the placenta. Like, we just don't know. So that, unfortunately, because of the timing of my switch from the OB to the midwife, it was never picked up.
Okay.
She was really only able to see me 2 times, kind of measure my belly. Like, it just, I would say he basically was born before that was picked up. So he just decided to pull the hatch.
Aren't they amazing like that? Yeah, yeah. That's
I'm not getting any nutrients I'm getting out. So I would say, everything with Mateo's birth was really traumatic, incredibly traumatic, right? Because it was nothing I expected. So going into labor at 35 weeks, realizing it was actual labor, then realizing that he was going to have to be delivered by cesarean, because he was breached, but we also didn't know he was restricted. Then having him be born, and he was, 3 pounds, which is like 1.5 kilos, and then having to have him stay in the NICU in the hospital for, almost a month. I mean, all of it was.
Sure.
I equated it almost to more like being in a car accident than having, that's what it felt like to me. It was just like shock, surprise, surgery, then going to this hospital and sitting there 12, 14 hours a day, nursing in a NICU. I mean, it was very, very disconnected. And I would say I'm probably in a bit of like shock almost, like I remember we were editing the film at that point, and I just kept like trying to get back in the editing room and work, and my editor kept saying, take some time, baby, bond with the baby, and I can't, explain it, but looking back, it was almost, I think, like an adrenaline kind of thing where I was like frenetic. You know what I mean? I was just kind of like really trying to process, and I didn't realize for years later how sort of traumatic that is, right? Not to have the baby placed in your arms after birth and be with you, because even like women who have a C-section, even if the baby is not allowed in recovery, usually you're holding the baby at least for a little bit right after the birth, and then you're quickly reunited. Well, we were never reunited. I didn't see the baby for 24 hours. I didn't see him because he was in the NICU, and I was recovering from the C-section, and we couldn't get in this same room. So that was really devastating. And I think that when I chose to have the VBAC with Pietro, of course I knew I wanted a VBAC, but it was quite difficult. And I was in the hospital, and again, it did not go smoothly. It was a very tough VBAC. For a lot of reasons, it like almost didn't happen. It wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had my OB, who's in the film, Jacques Moritz. If he wasn't attending me, it wouldn't have happened. Because he really had the seniority in the hospital to push it, to the 11th hour, because they're very nervous about VBAC moms.
Yeah.
So that was also a difficult birth, but so different. Oh my God, Quinne. I mean, even though the birth itself was so difficult, and Pietro came out and he wasn't breathing for a minute, and it was a little scary, but they resuscitated him right away easily. It was fine. It wasn't like a bad resuscitation. But how different, that this child was placed on my chest after the birth, never left me. And, you can see in my relationship with my kids exactly what happened, right? Where it's like, they're both bonded to me in very different ways that have a lot to do, with the way they came into the world. A lot to do, and but it's really, I have to say, like, and again, this is not to say doesn't impact how you love your child.
No.
We're not muscles. We have this, frontal lobe. It's like it's not about how you love your child, but
Mm-mm.
bonding is different than love.
Yeah.
And bonding and breastfeeding with Mateo was unbelievably difficult. And breastfeeding was a failure after about 6 weeks. And with Pietro, with the vaginal birth, I mean, bonding was so natural. Breastfeeding went on for a year. It was like night and day. And yes, of course, first time mother, second time mother, yes. But I do feel, and of course today, I'm bonded in both boys equally and love the boys equally. But I do feel that, I really experience like both ends of the spectrum, I would say.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you did. And how did you end up dealing with that trauma? Did you do anything specifically, or did you just sort of slot it into your day? How did you actually work yourself through that trauma, which it was,
Uh,
and shifted your story?
yeah, I actually don't think that I worked through the trauma until maybe like 2 years later.
Mm.
Um, when we were in Brazil, and I think Mateo was maybe like 2.5, and I was doing some kinesiology. I was
Oh,
having a kinesiology session,
mm.
and all of a sudden it all came up.
Wow, yes.
It all came up, and we did like the healing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And it was really so much of the healing was around that immediate postpartum window,
yes.
that immediate, that not having your baby, not having the baby and the baby's, father or other parent, together. It was like not having that, um, you know, moments,
Mm.
that kind of full circle of that journey. And so I think that was really the first time that I really had like time to really grieve, right? And that's
Yeah.
another thing too, is that it's very taboo, right? Because you have a healthy baby, you're really not allowed to grieve anything
Mm.
around how the baby came into the world, right? And that's kind of the social norm.
And grief goes hand
Um,
in hand with birth. It's just whether you have a birth where you had things go pretty decently smoothly. Birth is not smooth for anybody ever. It can be, but the internal workings of a woman, but that grief, I so agree. It's taboo, and it's absolutely necessary to acknowledge that there's loss of yourself greatly. And then you add trauma on top of that. Sure. Okay, so very powerful moment. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I think it is very taboo. And I think, especially with Mateo's birth, we were so grateful, right? That, because, things could have gone another way. He could have been stillborn, he could have died in the womb. I mean, there was something going on that we weren't aware of. And so you were so like grateful, right? And let me tell you, I mean, every day when I had to go into that NICU, and I was so lucky because, in the hospital, it's like they have the sicker babies on one side and then healthier babies like on the other side. And walking into that hospital every day for 4 weeks and seeing those other parents with babies who were like, really touch and go.
Sure.
And I mean, the gratitude, like that you feel, you know what I mean? Of like, oh my God, my baby's gonna be okay. So you're so thankful, like
Mm.
to the nurses and the team and everybody who's helping
Mm.
support this baby. And it's like, yeah, there's just no room to like mourn your trauma.
And so that what you just said made me think. Did you find in all the different birth scenarios that you encountered that women ever prepared for that worst case scenario and a baby going into NICU? How prepared do you think women are? Because it's such a devastating thing to have happen. And then there's so many hundreds of unknowns. And it feels to me as if there's and people don't talk about it, and women walk into these unknowns on top of the fear. And it's as if we should be talking a lot more about what it looks like in a NICU, what it looks like, what you will need to do, how often will you be able to go to the hospital, what does breastfeeding look like, what does kangaroo care look like, and what state does your baby have to be in when that happens, and then who takes care of you when you are going back and forth. There's just so much.
Oh, I mean, I think that's such a huge point. I think, I don't know how I would have done it in a sense if I didn't even live anywhere near the hospital. So I don't know how I would have done it if I wasn't able, like I was able to stay with my parents who lived closer to the hospital. I was able to had a rotation of friends who came every day and brought me food, and I don't know how I would have handled it. And I think that also I saw many babies there that were not getting any visits. And a lot of times it's because they were second or third children. The parents did not expect this to happen. Maybe they lived an hour away. A lot of people come into New York City to have the baby. They may live out in New Jersey. They may live, in a different state. And I saw a lot of these babies like really unattended, for different reasons. And a lot of times it was just, the parents didn't have any childcare at home. I think it's super important. I think there's no preparation done.
And it feels as if people don't want to even go to the worst case scenario, because if we talk about it, then it might happen. Oh God, we can't put it into the realm. You can't have a bad thought. When I have found when I work with parents in preparation, there is such value in understanding the depths of the worst case scenario, because then you know what it feels like, and then it's done.
Yeah.
The cases where you do that kind of work, you have less of it actually happening than this unknown thing that then lives and people fall into. So I think that conversation needs to happen more. Oh, yes. So I am so intrigued by this complete, in Afrikaans we'd say from the van die os op die jas, which is just from one topic onto another, because I haven't watched your film about the sweetening the pill yet.
Oh yeah, and just so you know, I heard you in the intro, Quinn. So we retitled that when it's not released yet.
Oh,
no, it's okay because it's not even out.
Okay.
But we're now calling it the business of birth control.
Oh, yeah. No, but I did see that on your website. I missed that. What? Yeah, sorry, I screwed that one up. But
No, it's the business of birth control, but it's not out yet.
And I think that's so relevant, and I love that you're exploring and going into that conversation, because sure, it affects so much of women, and we don't want to look at it, and it's this really big topic. So I'm really excited that you're doing that. I'm going to look out for that then. Okay, so I haven't missed it. It's not out yet. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I have one more question for you. If you could give a newborn a welcome gift in words, what would you say today?
I would just say, welcome. You are here. You are being received in love. And you are supported by ancestors that you've never met. And a beautiful beautiful journey in this lifetime.
Thank you. Yes, to all those brave souls coming in. They are such light bearers. Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you so much. You are offering something for people to connect with you, a free offering. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Which is this? I don't want to say the wrong thing.
So everyone will, while you are watching this, you'll be able to click on a link that follows through to you. Yes, that is a free offering.
You mean our giveaway?
Your giveaway. Yes, yes, your giveaway.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. You will be able to click on a link. We have a lot of amazing programming at the business of .life. We have body literacy series. We're in our 5th episode that we've been doing every month that you'll be able to access. And we're also giving away some free sets of all of our movies. So you'll be getting The Business of Being Born and the More Business of Being Born sequels.
Those are amazing. I love those, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is your offering.
That is your offering. The giveaway, the offering, the free gift. Yes. Thank you. That is amazing. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. It was pivotal, and I feel like we just brought a few very important things to light. And thank you to all of you for joining the Conscious Parenting Summit. I'm Quinne Brown, your host, and it is just my joy. Just love.